Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Today we're going to paint that white-breasted nuthatch. I have him here. This is a photo that I got. It's free. It's up on Wikipedia. If you type in Google white-breasted nuthatch, go over to Wikipedia. It has a Creative Commons license on it, which means it's all free to use and everything. And it's a great little photo. These little guys at our place out in Pennsylvania are everywhere. And they always walk down the tree and with their tail up. And they're just amazing. They're just everywhere. We had two different types of nuthatches out there. But they're really a lot of fun. Very colorful bird, very active little bird, and I love it. And I haven't painted him for like 15 years, so it's going to be good to go back again. So what I have here is a board. It's about 10 inches this way, and it's 16 inches this way. I just wanted something off. I wanted to have it more vertical because he's more vertical. And I'm not going to paint a detail this tree as you see here because I think he blends in just a little bit too much that. I'm going to do something very impressionistic. Not quite sure yet, but we're going to play around and see what we can do, okay? I'll show you how I advance that. Now, what I did with him was you can draw him on. I wanted him right about the same size. I want to be able to show you guys a lot of detail work. So I just laid the photo over this, put some transfer paper underneath using a sharp pencil and transferred him onto here. And then I'll do some other stuff right on here. So there's other ways I've showed you at other videos. You could use the white plastic and that marking pen, get a good comment. Now this doesn't shorten our need to learn how to draw. We're artists. We need to develop our skills, but we can paint some really beautiful paintings along the way as we develop skills, okay? All right, so I got a good tracing on him. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you is I am going to today put a lot of detail up and around his face. And this is a wood panel. And if you're using a canvas, you might want to give it 3-4 coats of the canvas prep medium so you fill in most of the weave. What I do if I'm going to do a bird or something that's going to have a lot of thing, I sand it, but then I also use this. This is an old Dutch technique. You use a single blade razor like this, okay? And what you do is you angle it backwards and you pull across it like this. You can hear it scrape. See, and you can just pick up just a little bit of it. But what that does is it finally makes it razor smooth. It is really, really smooth. So you'll have nothing that interferes with the fine hairs of a small brush that will, interfere with anything. Now, you've seen me use this, I call it razor scraping, and I learned it from the 17th century Dutch painter and reading some of his things that he did. And so sometimes when you build on a painting over and over and you build some texture on it, you can come back and scrape, and that texture interferes with next layers or next thing you want to do. Let your painting dry really well and come back and scrape, and it works really well. Okay, so I have that down. 2 coats of the canvas prep medium is what I put on here. Sanded it, razor scraped it, transferred my design, and did a really, it makes a nice bird. Let's go in and let's just set some of the movement using our knife and big brush. So I have my traditional palette out here. Instead of using the phthalo blue like I always do, today I'm going to use the Ultramarine Blue. So this is the Ultramarine Blue that's out here. It's not as powerful, not nearly as powerful. It's only got about 30% of the power of phthalo blue. And as far as a painting blue, it's an easier blue to use, but he is more of the violets. And so I'm going to concentrate. So the ultramarine blue goes more violets. The phthalo blue goes more blue-green, okay? But first, let's come in, and I'm going to put the edge of a tree here. I want his head I want that edge of that tree. I want part of his body to come out over the ground here. Now, I do like some of this warmth, but I also like a little touch of the blue back there. So I'm going to play the background here, and then I'm thinking a couple of leaves, maybe just the edge of the tree bark here, and and we'll work out there. I always thought, I had some shagbark hickories in our yard out in Pennsylvania, and they loved to walk down there and check under everything for little bugs and stuff. But that would be a little bit too much. I think I'm just going to do a simplistic tree. Let's see how it goes. So I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and a little bit of white here, and we'll make ourselves a real light blue here. Let's get it up. maybe around an 8 or so. So you can see how blue-violet that is. Up around an 8 or so here. And yeah, something like that. That's just a nice light little blue here. And I'm going to start with my big brush. I can always tell. This is the extender medium. This is the open medium. You've seen me use these all before. I'm going to put out a little bit more extender medium here. And use that to thin this with a big old 2-inch brush. And I'm just going to come down here. And I'm gonna impart some blues and some light colors back here. I want this a little heavier paint and some of this. I'm gonna do this very impressionistic, which means I, put some of these colors just thoughtfully but randomly, if that makes sense. Okay, so we'll put that out there. Okay, then let's see. I might. There's a color we have, and I got just a little bit left in this old tube here. There's a color medium white, which is a real pretty color. It is basically white, a little bit of yellow oxide, and a little bit of burnt umber. But it's a pretty little color, and it almost matches some of that stuff that you see going on over here and to the other side down over this way. So it might be kind of fun to have some of this marked up through the blues here and just use that knife. And it's a pretty color. It really is. Let's come down with and take some brown, some burnt sienna, a little green. Those are my favorite colors. We'll add some extender to this. Let's just take some of this in there as well. This will make up a nice base, mottled base color for the tree here, of what we want to do with the tree, maybe, and just beginning of it. And I don't want to overmix anything here. I just want to, just pull some of this down here, give the impression of it, of that tree. Let's make sure that your line is going to go right through him, right? And we'll let some of it fade off over here. But we'll just grab some of this, toss that in. Now, I like to, when I'm doing stuff really impressionistic, let's grab some of this blue in this as well. And I like to use a combination of the knife and the brush in different marks and different ways here, because that just adds, I feel, so much interest to the painting. And I'll pull with a paper towel. Your job is to just establish some movement. That's all I want to do, is establish some nice movement in there. Let's add a little more contrast to that. Not too much more, but a little more. Let's go maybe a bit more. I want to go lean maybe towards the burnt siennas. Now, why the burnt siennas rather than greens? Because these burnt siennas, which you see a lot of the burnt sienna kind of tones in there, but the burnt sienna is also a complement to the blue that is in him. So it's kind of a neat little color. He'll pop off quite a bit off of this burnt sienna here. So we'll just take our knife and drag it here. And then we're doing the impression. We're not going to paint a perfect, set of bark or anything here on the tree. We're going to paint the impression. And so I want to just pull some of that and leave that impression here around, and let some of it just fade off here to the side. Maybe some of this yellows and stuff like that here. And just paint the impression of them, see? And maybe give an impression like I was going to have maybe some of the leaves and stuff coming out through here. Maybe, we'll just give the impression of something back on the other side, something back up over here. We don't know yet, but see, I love that impressionism of it. So you can come back here, wipe a little bit off. Don't get too much texture right around here. Maybe blur some of this up into, I've lost his tail. I'll have to redraw that a bit. But, you know, like I told you, those that are newer painters and stuff, if you take a damp paper towel and if you just pull like this, you'll reduce the color and you can bring back your drawing that way. And so you can see everything. Just wiping it through, you can see everything there pretty well. But I love impressionism like that, and that's kind of what I want to do here. Maybe a little bit more burnt sienna, maybe a touch of the blue into this burnt sienna. See how it darkens it? This will be a bit more high contrast, but maybe right around him. You know, how much are we going to put around him that just dies down? You know, that is up to us as the artist, right? So, but I might have just a bit of it here. We'll leave some of this on as almost like a shadow. We'll let this just fade off over here because I want it mostly right around him. Just blurry lines like this. I love that. So if you have a strong horizontal, I like to break it like this at an angle sometimes. See that interest that it gets. Now, some of you may not like it, but I do. So, you know, everybody's different, right? We're all different. That's what makes art so much fun. We're all different. So I might just break that right like that. And that might make a nice, fun little bit here. Let me rinse out my big brush here so I don't get color left in it. Now, let's go in and let's I'm going to use, to start out with him, you can see a lot of detail in his feathers. It's a beautiful picture of him. So you can see a lot of detail in his feathers. When I'm going to maybe not paint him quite as impressionistic, I go to the synthetics. This is a synthetic. When I want to paint really quite a bit more impressionistic, I go to the fusion. Okay, the synthetic has a little bit more spring in it. It allows me to roll over and get an edge. You see me in the flowers, the roses and everything. I use the synthetic anytime I'm going to do a lot of drawing within my painting. It's a really great brush to do that. So that's what I do. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to find some of the tones. You can, if you look real close, you can see a blue and burnt sienna tone here, more of a blue tone, a little bit of burnt sienna back there. I'm going to find a good undertone for his white. And then we'll add some of the other areas. I'm going to start out by adding just some extender. So let's take a little blue right up over in here and some white. You can even use some of this medium white in these darker tones. It works really, really well. But see, that's a pretty kind of a tone right there. And that's really very close to what he is right there. And so we'll put that in. So it's medium white with a little bit of blue and a little bit of burnt sienna right there. And we'll blur the edge of him so he softens out underneath. Let's head a little bit more blue, maybe a touch of white. The medium white will actually tone it, the blue, a little. And so we go over, add white, we'll get a little bit more clear blue, sharper blue, and you can see that sharper blue underneath him here. So medium white, because it has burnt umber in it and that yellow oxide, which is PY42, those of you that study the chem numbers like I do, it is also considered an earth color. And so earth colors are toning colors. So burnt umber, yellow oxide. So you reduce the amount of that in your paint and you'll get a clear, more sharp, a little bit brighter blue. This is what we're going to get right there. Let's add a touch more blue to that. And we'll pull some blue, just a bit more blue. Maybe not quite that much, but it's very close. It's really close. Let's just take a bit of that out. And let's get that bit of burnt sienna that we see right there. So it's mostly finding the colors, finding the edge. And, you know, I'm teaching some beginners right now. I'm really enjoying teaching, taking some of the young talent here in our panhandle of Nebraska, and I'm just doing some free classes with them, showing them some stuff. And one of the things that they don't do a lot of, that they don't know a lot of, and they ask me all the time, is the color mixing. That's where they find the ultimate frustration. So I was thinking, maybe with you guys as well, I'll sit down with them and I will basically film a class on some of the color mixing, how to get some of that through. I have the big, huge color theory online classes that teach you a tremendous amount on color theory. But just to get you started out that you can paint some of this stuff, it might be kind of fun. So, I mean, let me know in the comments down there if you want to try something like that. If I get enough people wanting it, maybe we'll film something up. There are, YouTube is kind of funny because you get some people that just want to watch a video and paint, and then you get some that really want to learn. I'm going to take that darker tone that I see right in there because I like how that pops his shadow. I like how that pops part of him off here. So I'm going to push some of that right in there just to pop him off a little bit more. Let's take maybe a bit of that down a little further, right down here. We might do some more, but that'll work pretty well. Okay, now, so we've got a good undertone happening under here. Let's go back to some of that and just add a bit more of that a little higher there. So it's basically, really, he's contrasty. You got some whites, and then you got a darker blue, and then your mid-tone blues here. There's not a lot where you see me paint other things like little wrens and stuff. There's not a lot of mid-tone to him here. He's a bird of really light and dark and some mid-tone blue violets. So let's do that. Let me just slide over, and I'm going to take... Let's put in some darks. Let's put in some blue and a bit of the burnt sienna. And it's just a little bit of it because you can see how quickly, here's the bright, and see how quickly that grays it, right? Because ultramarine blue is very sensitive to other colors. It's a weaker pigment than the phthalo. So if you've been painting a lot with phthalo and you switch over to ultramarine, you are going to really use a lot less. So I'm going to pull down using contour following strokes here. And I'm just going to tap that around. I don't want to do big long strokes. I don't want to build up texture, but I do want to get some variations in it, and you can get that just through transparency of your color. See, I can pull back like that and allow transparency to come in here and almost hit some of that good look that's there like that. So but I'm going to build right in here a little bit more. That's good. Let's take some of that. Let's reach back up here, up onto some of his flight feathers. These are his secondaries here. I believe these are his secondaries here. And we'll push some of that in. We'll see some, and I'm not adding anything to it, not even any extender. I'm just doing regular painting here, basically, filling it in, using the side of the brush here, adding a few little just marks, and then I'll lift the pressure and drag it out. So that will give me a more of what we call a fractured edge there. So don't have too much texture. That'll get in the way of everything we want to do later on. So we'll add a few little marks here. There's another little deeper mark here. These are his big primaries. So we'll put some of those into his primaries here. Maybe just drag this along. I'm not going to do a lot of detail here. You see a lot of his feathers all folded up. I'm going to add just a bit of extender because this is starting to tack up on the palette for me, and I don't want it to completely go away. Let's add a bit more right out here and a bit more right out here onto this edge here. Right like that. Just where do you see the darks, right? Where do you see the darks? We'll fracture that edge a bit. Maybe a bit right in there. A bit down his center line here. And through his mantle, there's a nice dark run right here. And he's really, he's really not too hard to paint. He's a light and dark little bird. You can, I like that. Here I had just a little more ultramarine blue. And it varied that color. I kind of like that. Maybe add a little touch of that through some of these other areas where I had that darker gray, and then just vary it with a little more ultramarine blue. Get a prettier little color coming off there. All right, so that gets a good medium tone in there. We have some areas here that you can, with the synthetic, just use the tip and just draw back and forth. It gives you a nice bit of light to it. Now let's lighten up and let's get a mid-tone. So we'll come over here, we'll add some Ultramarine Blue, a little bit of our burnt sienna. Let's see about what value that is. Let's go right along his back. So that's about a value 5 around his back here. And that's right about what I am, a little bit dark, but just a value 5. Now this is kind of a blue violet. He might be just a touch. Let's look at that a bit brighter and see. A little less burnt sienna, a little more blue and white. Let's see what that looks like in there according to him. And so very, very close. Close enough for a lot of things, but you can do this. It's a weak pigment. So if I add a little Hansa over here, you can see it yellows it just a tiny bit. And so it'll make it a slightly different tone. So we'll go from blue violets into not even a pure blue-green, but just a little greener than that blue violet. Let's add some of that in there. And maybe a little bit, you can look for the value changes. So it's a bit darker over here, so a little bit more blue, a little bit more ultramarine blue, maybe even into some of that grayed first color. We'll pull some of that in there. Just get a nice variation in there. That's kind of pretty. We'll work for some variations in some of these other tones here, but we'll just kind of tap in and model in some of this color to begin with. And we'll take it up on edge here and just strike some in on edge like that. So you can see him starting to take a little shape here. A bit of this out here onto his tail. And, and if you do anything, just wipe through it a little bit so it doesn't go completely opaque. We're going to add more, so, you know, it'll be kind of fun. Let's take a little touch lighter right out through here and hit that tail right there like that. And touch lighter. This is I'll use the chisel of the brush. And sometimes when I start to do some of this detailing like this, I rest my hand so I can just use the chisel like this to push the edge of that wing in there like that. Maybe a touch lighter out through here. Just a bit on there. You can use this to kind of draw in his feathers, his tail feathers there a touch. But we have a few more values to get in there, but that works. Always just come down here, model the color, vary the tone a little bit, and maybe take another little strike of it. Not all the way, but see, it just adds a touch more. And if you lose some of your dark, just step off to the side, add a little bit more dark, maybe even a little violet to that, so it changes it up even a bit more. Now, when you're at that ultramarine, see how I had to go back and add ultramarine. It's been a while since I've painted with just pure ultramarine, and you know, it takes you a bit to learn those percentages again. And ultramarine is really weak, so it's beautiful tone, beautiful color, very, very historical color, but it's pretty weak as if you've painted a lot with me on the phthalo blue. And so you'll be, you know, it takes you a few minutes to learn, okay, I don't add that much with that phthalo blue there anymore, right? Let's just add right in here a little mark of it. And you see you can get some nice variations there to that. Now, there's light little tips on the wings and stuff there. I'll show you that. We'll do that. But we're going to go up and work up around his head a bit. Now, see, this is already dry here. But if I reach out and pick a little bit of water up, I can reconstitute some of my undertone here. And I think I'm going to come right in here and put some of that undertone. Push that in right there. Soften some of that. And push some of that tone right in there like that. So I have a good like shadow to set up some of the lighter tones. Let's even see there's a nice little shadow right there. So let's just kind of sketch that in here just lightly with the tip of your brush. sketch some of that in there. And, you know, that dried a touch light right here. So I'm going to redefine it slightly darker in a few areas here. And if you push that edge like this, you'll fracture that edge, kind of like what you see on him. But it's almost a black, so it's going to take us. And in the old, you know, days of the Dutch, they didn't necessarily use black. Some of them did, but some of the artists will make a what's called velvet black, and that was ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So you would take the ultramarine blue like this and burnt sienna, and you get this beautiful dark, and they called that velvet black. And so it is a beautiful color, and that would look pretty good in some of this as well. Just a bit more. So it's a touch more burnt sienna than what I was using earlier. But that gives you some nice variation, guys, and that's what you're looking for. It's good variations. Work some of these colors through him. Get these variations of his tones. Here, even though he doesn't have a lot, because he's really kind of a light and dark bird, right? Really is. But we can take, let's thin this out, and this will model it up. So let's just model up some of the shadow, just quick little marks here, following the contour, just to model up where you would see some of the shadows and some of these dark lines here, light and dark lines, which are making his primary flight feathers here. We'll just divide that all up again. So now you see, through a slow application of color, we've got some really pretty tones in there. Let's thin it out. Wash a little bit of this up front, up around his beak. He's going to have a mark right behind his eye. And then I always like to, I'm going to put an eye ring on him, so I always like to put a little shadow right around that eye ring that's on him. And before we go any more, let's take that velvet black here, burnt sienna, and the blue, and let's just touch that right in to make his eye. Round little eye right there. Very dark, even a little bit more blue right here. And let's just push that in. I'm just using the tip of this brush, and it works pretty well to put that in. Now, we have a lot of small little stuff to do. And so I like to, and those of you who've seen other birds, I use my number 4 round. This is my favorite one to paint a lot of bird feathers and stuff like that with. But I'm going to start some of them out softer. So I'm going to take a bit of the white and a bit of the medium white, and I'm going to add some open medium to this. Just model these colors here, and I'm going to build up. I start kind of where I see it in lighter first, which is going to be right here. Don't add too many strokes because this color is kind of opaque, so it'll take out a lot. So don't add too many strokes. Just quick little marks. Let's put a few little marks right in here. Okay. And that blue's wet, so I can drag some of that in and get a nice painterly look to him. Real super light touch. Let's then lighten up a bit more. Step off to the side so I can look at the color difference. Add a little open medium here. And let's pull some light right across here. Just lift, lift. Real quick. Don't do it too many times. You will kill the painting if you do it too many times, because it'll make it opaque, solid. Does that make sense? So learn how to just take a couple of marks and get out of there. Get out of there. Let's do a mark or two right along the top here. Top of his head. I'm going to pull my finger right along that to soften that out. Okay, we'll pick up a bit more here. Let's add a touch of that light right in here that we see. And see, I can, and if you don't want to use your finger, do this. Rinse your brush out, okay? Pinch wipe all that water out of there. Get rid of that water. Start right back up here by your blue and just lightly drag into the edge. Now see, you'll pick up white. Do you see that? So you got to wipe that off every time. And just start up at the blue and drag it into the white, and you will give you this undulation edge, which is what you see right there on him. Start in the blue, light touch, and pull right into the white right there like that, okay? And that works really, really well. And then as you know, so we put down some soft marks. I'm going to put down a little bit more white, a little more in, right down in here. I'm going to encroach on my brush. This is a little wet, so I'll be careful. But I'll push in a bit more right in here. Real light touch. I'm barely touching the surface. Let's just deposit a little bit of it right down through here, maybe just a little bit as a reflection in him right there, okay? Let's reach right up here with some of this white, lighten it up, and let's add that little reflected light right in here, along right in that area, and I'll pull to soften that a bit. That's kind of pretty there. A little bit lighter than what he is, but that's okay. You know, it's like I tell all my students, once I take the photo away, mine's correct, right? So if I like it, you know, I don't try to always emulate the photo. If I like something, I like the way it looks, I'll stop. You know, I don't try to copy a photo. Let's increase the light right up against the edge of this mark here. That's back behind his eye, right in there. And just pull that in. That's kind of nice. I like some of that. You can do it with the point of a round, but sometimes I just like to use the edge of the brush there and put a couple little marks that just add so much to that. A couple little, just little marks. And you can push out too. Give a different direction. Push out or pull out like that. You can pull out. If you take out too much of your shadow, just reset it. Reset your shadow back in there, because your shadow, any of these colors would help you shadow, and you can set any kind of shadow back in there. So that's got some good color variations. Now, let's just take some of this light and the blue, and we'll come out and we'll add the little light tips. I use just that chisel edge of this brush. This is why I like this to draw with. It's just I use that sharp little chisel edge. You can use a liner brush. But a liner brush to me, and see, I'll just tap in like this and put these little edges in for the little feathers here. But a liner brush sometimes is too perfect and can leave a little ridge of paint, and then that hinders you later on from painting something. Now, let's just put a little bit of the blue and stuff in, darker color, and we'll paint right up to the edge of that mark. And that'll set the mark in to the bird here. So I put on a little too much white, and then I reach right up to it and paint it out. Just like that, leaving just the tip of the light there. Does that make sense? So, and if your brush gets too full of paint, add a little, I like to add extender. You can rinse it out, but just get rid of some of the paint so you get your nice chisel. You can see it has a super sharp chisel. That's why I like it. And I'll add some light here. And when you're going to do like the lights here on the flight feathers, if you want to get absolutely perfect, I don't. But you put the paint on one side of the brush and you pull the paint. Don't push the paint. So the paint is on the trailing edge of the brush. If you put it to the front end of the brush, the paint will slow the front of the brush down and it will widen the brush out and you'll get a wider line. But if you're trailing it, it doesn't slow it down. So you pull like this and see I can get super light marks, and I can even jump and wiggle it a bit to get some, some different, kind of almost like little sparkly lines and stuff there. And then if it doesn't come out enough for you, thin it out. Add some water is the best. I'm just going to use a little extender here. But water, thin it out with a little water and you'll pull a thinner line. See how it pulls a thinner line? I just thinned it out a little bit, and it'll pull a thinner line. So water causes the paint, water's your solvent, causes the paint to move. Extender is thicker than the water, and so it won't move as fast. So if you want really fine details, you use water. If you want to slow it down, thin it down so you can get some details, but not too much, use some extender, because it's not quite as thin. So that gives me some details there. Let's add a little bit of light right out here to this edge here. And there is some light little touches right out here, maybe little. And when they're real small like this, I generally won't go back and paint them again. I'll just let that sit there. But that's up to you. You just take some dark and reach back up in there. Let's go just a touch more blue here. And we'll do a bit of a line right here. And a bit of a line on the edge of his primaries there, right? The edge of this one, go back in. And it's how much detail you want to put in. That's all up to you. I'm getting a pretty good capture of him, so I'm not going to worry too much more about that. I'm going to lighten up some of this blue, a little bit of the open medium here, okay? And a bit more blue here. And let's just add some light strikes and marks right in here to feather him up. Just touch and lift off there. That kind of feathers him up a bit. Maybe a bit more right in here. Boom. Bit more. Maybe a mark or two. Sometimes I just drag over lightly just to give the idea of feathering there. That's kind of nice. That all works there. I want to get almost more of this burnt sienna, kind of violet. Let's see if we can find that. I'm going to come right down here, burnt sienna, and a little bit of our Quinacridone Violet. It's kind of a real pretty color. And let's lighten it up. See, that's a real pretty color. Now let's thin it out with some extender so it doesn't have much power. So we're going to basically wash or glaze this on right here. Let's see if we can find that real pretty little color there. That is kind of nice. Just a light little wash of that underneath there. We'll find that just a touch more. And let's go. See, once your eye, and this happens to me, when I first look at something, I don't always, my eye is adjusting to it. I can't always pick up the tones. But as I establish more tones through him, I start to see more tones in the actual, reference, and then I start to paint more. So, and if that doesn't happen to you, it will with time. Now that's a little dark. I hope you all see that. I'm going to lighten that up. I don't take it off. I just lighten it up, and I'll paint through that. Let's just paint right through that, and maybe incorporate it a bit, because I love the color, the changing of color. And that's what I try to do. And sometimes a mistake can really help you in your painting. Okay. Not that that was a mistake. You got to have fun with it, right? And those of you that are beginners painting stuff like this takes practice to see it. The biggest thing is, like I tell all my students, like I'm telling my beginners, and I paint with them again tomorrow. The biggest thing is, my job is to teach you what it is you're looking at, what it is you're seeing. Seeing this tone here. I don't have it, the depth of color right here as heavy as the depth of color right here. Now, he looks pretty good. You could leave him like that. But I could increase the depth of that color. A little more blue, a little more white. I don't necessarily want, and let's put a little extender. I don't necessarily want exactly the same tone. Maybe add just a bit of this. And increase the opacity or the depth of color right there, which will make his edge a little bit more transparent. And you see, my first go through in a painting, I don't always see that, and then later on I start to see it as I start to look at it more. Does that make sense? This is why I do a slow approach to painting my subjects. What I'm doing is learning the colors of what it is I'm going to paint. Now I'll take a little bit of dark. Let's set this up right here. And let's put that dark edge that we see. That can go a little darker, a little more burnt sienna and blue. So I've painted a lot of him here with this small filbert. This is I believe this is a 4. 4 or a 6 would work really nice. And but that takes a lot of brush control. You can go down to a 2 really easy painting this, but it's up to you. or you can do it with a round. I just don't like the texture that sometimes comes on the round, right? So, and then I can use some of this and a few little marks here. I don't want to make too many specific. I just want to give the idea of the flight feathers there. Let's go back to a bit of the light, pull the color right on the edge here. That's pretty good. Now I could, if you want, you can make it more detailed. I'm not going to. But I will put on a bit more of this edge of this wing right in there like that. So you see just a touch more. But I could build that all out in here and put in some more light. I'm not going to worry about that because he's got a really good look. I want to work up on his face and give the interest right back up here to his face. So let's build a little more light. And as I build this up in here, I will start allowing some of the texture to come in. So that's got a lot of good look to that. I'm going to flip over now to my detailing brush. And I'm going to grab just a point, and you can see this point of this brush is really detailed. I'm going to grab just a point. I'm going to put a tiny little catch light right on the back, about 11 o'clock on the back of his eye back there. Now, it is really, really small, but that is probably just a touch too big, and I don't worry about that because it's really hard to get a catch light that small. And so what I'll do is, and I'll take my dark, and I'll paint up into it, and I'll do that, right like that, and I'll paint it down to size. Does that make sense? And sometimes I have to use my cheaters. My eyes are getting older. Sometimes I have to put a cheater, and I'll just check it. I don't like looking too long for them because my eyes get all blurry, but sometimes I'll put it on and check it, and that works pretty good. Let's take a little bit of the dark right underneath as that extra shadow right in there. And I'll tap around just a bit to loosen up some of this area, which is going to be shadows and stuff for all of the smaller little light touches we'll do. You can use this with the dark here. Let's bring a few little smaller marks right in here. Right like that around his head. That looks pretty good. Let's thin this out, maybe a little bit of blue into it. And we'll put the lower part of the beak on here. The lower part here. Right like that. And we'll pull just a little bit right from his head out into the beak. Right in there. And we'll make a lighter blue-gray, some blue, some white right here. Model it up a bit. We'll use that right on the top of his beak. And if it doesn't show up enough, you can always leave a little bit of dark edge there because you can kind of almost see a little bit of the dark edge there. So you can leave just a tiniest bit of the dark edge. That will help you. I like to pull that. But I like to also give, just like a catch light, the top of the beak is a little shiny, so it can sometimes catch a little light right in there. Right like that. Sometimes I'll add a little yellow and stuff to it. It's really kind of pretty. But let's take some softer light here. And I just kind of tap around in this area between the eye and the beak, and these are the small tips of the little feathers all around his face. And I'll go back and forth with my light and my dark, so I'll put some light on it. It generally makes them a little too big. Then I'll tap some of them down to make them a bit softer. I'll point the brush back up, give just a barely tip of it, and put the light eye ring on. And sometimes you have that eye ring going all the way around. I'll pick up even more white, pure white here, just a little touch. And I'll start right up here, and I'll go right around like that, very slowly. Put the tip of that eye up there. That looks pretty good. And sometimes I'll take a few marks of that pure white, even leaving some texture here, depending on the bird and how well I did that. I'll leave some of that on there like that, right? And that looks pretty good. Let's build a bit more light right up underneath here. That'll come right up to that shadow underneath the eye ring. Let's just add a few little marks. See, this starts to feather him up a bit. That looks pretty good. But you know, he's looking pretty good. You could work on him a little more and put in some more definition and stuff like that. And, you know, but I think he's looking pretty good for what I wanted to capture. I'm going to pull this dark right down through here a bit and just kind of push that in there like that. Let's bring that dark in down just a bit more. Take out just a touch of that light, just a bit of that. That makes him kind of really neat. I'm going to take some of that dark and the blue, and you don't see any of his feet here, but I kind of wanted to see a mark or two of his feet out here. So, and they're really kind of light, but I'm going to do it just the idea here that, you know, you see a bit of his foot, like right there. Just a touch of that. Let's get a bit more blue into that. Here, just the idea there, because I feel that you should probably, they have humongous feet. That's why I was kind of surprised that you didn't see any there. Now, there's a bit of this light and pink. This is where I'll start to define it up. It goes up a little higher towards the beak there, right like that. That's pretty colored. Let's get a bit more of that pinkish color right up in there. That's kind of neat. And so I'll look for just little color variations, a bit of the mark of that darker color right in here. Just pull that in. And that's all I'm looking for is the color variations. I could drag a bit of this and break up some of the feathering again and maybe reapproach the feathering one more time in there, but that's kind of up to you here. Let's darken down. So I'll start working around the bird here and start adding a few little things, maybe a little more feathering there, right? Let's go back to my big 6 here. Put a bit of light into this blue here. Build this front up just a touch more here. Maybe that's too much, so I'll lift off some of that, right like that. Build that up here. Boom. Maybe a touch of the lighter blue here, just to get that nice variation. Don't try to copy, just get some pretty color variations. Let's get that edge of that light here. Maybe you just pull, you can do it with the round, you can do it with this, just a bit of that to show that light. And then let's reset the dark. Burnt sienna and the blue. Reset some of the dark we see in there as well. I kind of like that. I might just leave that. I could go a little darker blue just as a nice contrast stroke right here to lift the mantle up over the edge of his feathers there. There we go. That's kind of pretty. Nice little, it's very, very close to what he is. Not exact, but I like that. I'll just drag this in a bit. And that goes right up against that white, and it makes that nice feathery edge. Just like, you know, so let's say it's dry here and you've got too much of a line. Let me show you. Just come back and you put the dark back on, right? We can put the dark like this, and this is how you make the feathery edge on a bird. So I'll put the dark on. I'll come back with that something similar to that lighter blue I already got there. And I touch and lift off and wipe it off again because you're going to pick up color. And that's what helps you make that real feathery edge here. Sometimes what's nice about this is you can turn it sideways there and make different widths. Turn your brush sideways and make different widths. Let's just pull this out a little farther. You can pull out as well and leave the feathery edge. But you pull and lift off, and that's what gives you that little edge. So that looks pretty darn good for this little guy, I think. Yeah, he can have... I start to look for little things, like there's just a littlest bit of light blue right here, which flattens that part of his head right there. I like that. It's a touch big, so I'll just paint just a bit of it out like that. That looks pretty good. So, see, and I like this. I like him sitting here. And, you know, you could make lighter yellow feet there, too. That's something you could do. Or if you want to, you know, if you want to take a little extender, some of this dark, and work it right around in here to gray, that would help him pop off a little bit more. That's up to how much contrast and stuff you want to have. I don't want that too much there. Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of just barely kind of sketch around a little bit. Okay. Here. Make some kind of little twig kind of things coming out here. And because I don't want too much stuff here. I don't want, you know, a ton of stuff going on. I want this very simplistic, right? And if this is too much out here, if it just right out here starts to get me maybe a little bit too much, I'll take a bit of extender, some of my soft medium white, and see I can pull back over that and soften some of that out right there, so your eye comes mostly right up in here. You could, you know, you could take your burnt sienna and some of your blues and some of this stuff and build, you know, some more ideas of the bark and stuff here, and then let that soften out as it goes further out. So there's all I mean, you know, you've seen me build some of this and some of the other things in the big landscapes. I built trees and stuff. You know, how you build some of these colors, you can do that, but I don't want to take away from him too much here. So we'll just keep that soft. But now that I have that, I think I'm going to go to a larger flat because I want these very impressionistic, some soft green leaves, maybe a little blue into this, thin. I like them thin. I'm going to do them thin here. And I had kind of like a little trio of leaves here. And trying to remember my poplars here. But just some ideas. You could also do these as little pine tree leaves. Those would be kind of neat as well. Here. Here. Just little ovals. Pull some of the color out on that. Very simplistic. That's what we want. Simplistic. Not too much to them. Just ideas here. Boom, little. Here. Big ones, wide ones, thin ones, whatever you want. Whatever kind of tree you're going to paint, you know, you can just give the impression of them. That's what we're painting, the impression of them, more than anything else. We just want the idea, because the painting is all about him. So I'll come back, maybe you could add a little vein line, a little idea of a shadow and a vein line there. Very, you know, add just a few little marks, like maybe there's one or two poking out over there. And, you know, one or two poking out here. Here. Just ideas of them. Not perfect by any matter of means. You know, I mean, you've seen me in my roses and stuff. Sometimes I'll do absolutely perfect leaves, and I just think those just take away from the overall feeling of the painting. So I don't always like to do that. And this is all supposed to be about him, so a bit of that color right in there next to him. I'm a big advocate of moving that color through the painting, right? It's different, so you know, that's up to you what you want to do. I mean, I love just to do this kind of stuff, you know, moving this through like this and back and just give the impressions of stuff. If I feel that this may be too much over here, I'll just cut the board. I'll just cut the board off and shove it to a more narrow one. You know, you can cut it off it any way you want. But I do like things to diminish down. So I do like to move the colors around and I like the casual nature of it and stuff. So, but you could take the darker, you could do this. I just felt that that is a little too much. But you would build a mid-tone, put a shadow, and put a light. That's how you build the bark. So if you wanted to, you know, if you wanted to come in here and build a bark, I don't want to. I don't really want that. I'll just show you here real quick. So you can put on a shadow, right? And then you come up with any kind of mid-tone. Maybe add some yellows into your mid-tone, warm some of it up, right? And then come in and look for the light. Model the colors. Model the light and that together. And then this is what you drag over the surface here like this. And you can start painting, you know, more of the color, the look and stuff that you'll see into the bark. And you can touch and push and soften some of that out. I don't want to do that much, but maybe a little bit of that right out here. Like I say, we don't know, so we'll play with it, right? I really want the knife here. And let's put a little bit of the blue in through that. See that? See, that starts to add a lot of interest, but does it add too much? But see, that's where I like to do this as well. And just start to take some of that down and make him a fun little bit here. So your eye comes right into this center here. And once you get more of him on, then you see where you're going. Then you can, you know, you can increase some of that you're going to do here into his back. That looks pretty good. But, you know, one other thing I like to do, and I always tell you guys, you know, take colors, move colors, add a little blue, add a little bit of light to this so you get a bit of the gray. And add, you don't have to add it everywhere over the tree, but you'll see the little touches of blue that picks up his color. And so, you know, consider adding some of that, you know, little marks of that just, and it just harmonizes your painting, right? Just harmonizing, just drag some of that around, and it just harmonizes your painting. Maybe a few little touches of that out into your leaves and stuff here. You know, that's all up to you. You know, soften your leaves out a bit. I like to just, as it drying up, I like to push through that, soften them out. That's pretty good. One of the things I really like to do, I'm going to do it here, is I'm going to look for that real light blue, maybe a bit of the medium white in that, but very light here. I always tell you this in bird paintings. One of the last things that I do in a bird painting, look, we're going to do this. I got 10 seconds. I can do it under an hour. But one of the last things I like to do is to paint very carefully right up around his head here. That really cleans up and pops his head for it. I'm going to put a little more blue into that. A lot of white, a little more blue. Here. There we go. There's my dog is sitting right underneath me, snoring away again. I don't know if you guys can pick it up. She's a little bit out of sorts because it's been like, you know, we've had that super cold weather hit throughout the panhandle here. The other day we got up and the feels like temperature was minus 42. It was really, really cold. So, there we go. Just like that. I think I will put just a touch more of a gray. Let's add a little water. Water will cause your paint to move a little quicker, and it does keep the brush together a bit more and lets you get a touch more detail. There we go. Kind of like that. So he's kind of neat. He's quite a bit different. You can define your leaves a bit more if you want. I might just pull through these a bit and just leave them very soft. Not too much of an edge or anything like that. You know, just very impressionistic. I love impressionism. So just leave them like that. And I like some of these colors just casually into that bark and leave it like that. So yeah, that's kind of neat. Maybe take a bit of the blue or even some of the grays. Add some of the grays into your backgrounds. Stuff just makes it kind of fun. Okay, but he's a little bit easier of a bird to paint in that he's just a lot of light and dark. But he's a really, really fun bird. I used to love to watch these. Now they say they're out here in Nebraska, and I haven't seen any, but you know, they say they're here. Add a little bit more. That's pretty fun. Okay, so you know, and maybe I'll add just a touch of light gray yellow here. Light gray yellow. Just a touch here, like they have big, huge claw feet. So just an idea. That might dry down enough. There we go, to just say that it's there. There you go, it's kind of fun. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of fun to do that. Learning a few more techniques, you know, using the edges of your brushes and stuff to get a little bit more casual painting technique to them. Kind of fun. And like I say, you could just wash all this out if you don't like the leaves or something like that. Or you can put more leaves right here, cover them up, you know, just a bit more. You know, that's all up to you. If you want to paint more details to the trunk and stuff like that, you can do that as well, okay? That's all up to you. I'm going to reach over, and I had some requests for some hydrangeas, so I got it all prepped. I'm going to reach over and go paint that one next. And then I have a really exciting one coming. I'm doing a big gray wolf out with the mountain and stuff back up behind it and stuff, because I'm going to be practicing the gray wolves, because I have a big, full, large painting of that I call Morning Hunt, and it's going to be a pack of gray wolves out walking along a frozen riverbed. So I'm going to get to that painting, and I'm going to practice it with you and take you guys and paint more of a landscape portrait with a big gray wolf right up in front. So I'll have that one. So I'll do the hydrangeas, the white and pink hydrangeas, and then we'll do that, and then we'll go into that gray wolf and stuff, and then another western after that. So lots of stuff coming to the channel, okay? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Please click the like button down there, and because that really helps the distribution of our channel, all right? And if you need any kind of questions or whatsoever, ask some of that down below. And my wife and I are having a good time. We're way behind, but we usually take every Friday morning, sit down, and we answer questions together on the channel. So, you know, if you have questions, we're getting to them all, but ask those questions, okay? Thanks, guys. Thanks very much. And I'll see you on the next one.